Good afternoon. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 7, of the signatories of Treaty 7, and I want to acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share a deep connection and history with this land. This past spring, fuel prices skyrocketed. We called on the UCP government to introduce a fuel tax rebate that would provide relief at the pumps for Albertans. Thankfully, the UCP listened to our call and brought in that same fuel tax rebate. This provided modest relief for Alberta drivers relying on their vehicles to get to work, pick up their kids, or go to the grocery store. We understand the government is serving notice to all fuel tax rebate retailers that they are restoring the gas tax on October 1st. That means the price at the pump is going to go up. This is absolutely the wrong decision. This couldn't come as a worse time, as Albertans are struggling to make ends meet. Inflation is at a 40-year high. Hundreds of thousands of Albertans are cutting back on essential purchases such as food, utilities, and housing. More than half of Albertans report having less than $200 in the bank for emergencies. Food bank usage is up and some grocery items have increased 30% or more year over year. Meanwhile, the UCP has made a bad situation worse by increasing taxes, increasing car insurance premiums, increasing student loan interest, increasing park and camping fees, and on and on and on. Electricity prices are expected to reach record highs next month, which will make it even more difficult for Albertans to keep the lights on. Last week, we called for an emergency rate cap to be implemented, and today, the UCP responded by announcing nothing more than an ad campaign. At every turn, this government makes decisions without families in mind, including today as we move to increase prices at the pumps. This is incompetent and it's cruel. Winter is coming and Albertans need real relief immediately. They need more money in their pockets to address the rising cost of living. That's why today we are here calling on the UCP government to extend the fuel tax rebate until at least the end of the year, so that Albertans can have more of their hard-earned money in their pockets to help them cover their bills. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, let's see if there's any questions in person. Seeing none, we'll go to questions on the line. First question goes to Tom Vernon.
On the gas tax relief program, how do you propose it to be designed, and should there be a target fuel price? Or are you looking at a date of where maybe inflation gets up? Can you outline how you feel that program should work differently?
So what we're asking for today is for the fuel tax rebate to be continued at least through the end of January, just to provide Albertans with that certainty. At that time, I think it's reasonable to sort of reassess what is going on. I think the challenge that we're seeing today is that even though fuel prices are coming down, prices on a number of other items, including groceries and utilities and a lot of basic costs for Albertans, are still very, very high. So we're seeing fuel prices potentially coming down. Albertans are finally seeing a tiny bit of relief, and the government is sort of clawing that relief back from them. And that's what we're asking them to consider reversing.
Did you have a follow-up, Tom?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, next question goes to Dylan Short.
Hello, you sort of answered this during the last question, but just to follow up, I guess, why January? You obviously calling for an extension, but I guess just why end of January? Why not call for it throughout the winter or into next year or so on or so forth?
Well, I think January is a pretty reasonable time to look at it and assess. It gives Albertans that certainty through the fall and into the winter. We know we're seeing prices that, or projections that utility prices are going to spike during that same time period. So while Albertans are still, struggling with high inflation, struggling with high utility prices, we think that, this tiny bit of relief that they're seeing at the pumps should go to Albertans instead of going to the provincial government.
Did you have a follow-up, Dylan?
Yeah, and this is also a bit of a follow-up to Tom's question there. So I guess just if, if the NDP was in government, how would you mentioned inflation, grocery prices are high throughout the winter. I guess just what would be sort of a benchmark that would be reasonable to let Albertans know when this would, what you'd be looking at for the program and how would it be shaped?
Yeah, absolutely. In my view, it should be about people. So, at the end of the day, what we're seeing right now is Albertans who are by and large, $200 or less in the bank. They're unable to cover basic emergencies. Many are writing into us to say, they can't afford groceries and utilities at the same time. We're seeing 20% of Albertans who are food insecure. So I think what's happening right now is people are really, really struggling. And until we're in a position where it's no longer the case that the majority of Albertans are, $200 or less away from meeting their basic needs, I think we need to continue to focus on that and to provide them what relief we are able to provide them.
Okay, next question goes to Kathleen Gurkowski.
Hi, thanks. I just want to follow up on some of the questions that have been asked already. So when the government brought in this fuel tax, they said they would reevaluate, and they said they'd have this graduated level. So it's come down a bit. So they're only going to collect a bit of the tax. And I'm wondering what is wrong with that graduated reduction as opposed, why is having the full fuel tax relief continue to January a better idea than those terms, the terms the government set up?
Yeah, so I don't actually think there's anything inherently wrong with a graduated reduction, but I do think, this is based on the cost of a barrel of oil. We all know that the cost at the pump and the cost of a barrel of oil don't always fluctuate perfectly together. It's not always clear the reasons for that, but those things don't always move together. So that's one thing. But I think the other thing is, as long as we are in this position where the majority of Albertans are barely making their basic needs, where they're not able to deal with emergencies that come forward, that the government should be continuing to provide what relief they can. We're in a position where the government has sort of billions of dollars in excess resource revenue coming in. Meanwhile, the people of the province are really, really struggling. So as prices at the pump hopefully begin to come down, that little bit of relief, that just small amount of relief that's going to come to Alberta families, we just think they should be able to keep that. And the reason we're suggesting through the winter is because we know, people are going to continue to struggle, I think, with high energy costs in terms of their electricity through the winter.
Did you have a follow-up, Catherine?
So with that struggle in utility costs, I guess you brought up the electricity cap, but is there anything more that you'd want to see with the natural gas rebate program? Or, what more could be done on the utility side of things?
Yeah, so I think the government should be looking at all potential forms of relief. Certainly, we have called for an emergency reinstitution of the electricity price cap to try and protect Albertans, just as we're seeing projections on electricity price spikes into the 20 or 22 cent range, which is pretty high. And I think the gas tax rebate is also something that they should be looking at. They brought this program in last year, and it didn't sort of take effect for months and months and months. And so, that's something certainly that they should keep an eye on, that they should be reassessing to make sure that Albertans are able to heat their homes.
Next question goes to Janet French.
Hi there. So if you're saying that people struggling to pay their bills and using the food bank is a sign that this gas tax relief should continue, there's always some people who are going to be living in poverty or living on the margins, even when inflation is low. So by that logic, wouldn't you just call for a permanent cancellation of the provincial fuel tax?
Well, again, I think the challenge we're seeing right now is that what we're talking about is the vast majority of people in the province. I do think that a government should always be focused on those who are struggling to make ends meet. That's why when we were in government, we increased the child tax benefit. That's why we cut child poverty in half. And given the opportunity, I'd like to take that even farther. But I think as long as it continues to be the case that more than half of the people in this province are $200 away from not being able to cover their basic costs, that the government should be doing everything they can.
Did you have a follow-up, Janet?
Yeah, some of these fuel taxes have the side effect of adding up together to prevent people from driving, which potentially reduces emissions, which was a stated goal of your party. How does your perspective that this gas tax should remain gone square with your environmental goals?
Well, I guess I would start by saying that I think, we can make progress on the environment, and we have to make progress on climate change because, it's happening and we need to do something about it. While not putting the burden of those programs on those who are most vulnerable. So, something like the carbon tax has rebates for those who are at lower income levels in order to cover those basic costs. The fuel tax doesn't have a similar thing. And so I think, right now we have the majority of the province who's struggling to make ends meet. People need their vehicles to be able to get to work. They need their vehicles to drive their kids to school. They need their vehicles to pick up groceries. And so, I think as long as we're in this position that we should be doing everything we can. And this is just one of, several proposals we've made, including electricity price caps, including a number of things I think that the government can consider, bringing back the insurance rate cap, funding post-secondaries properly so that tuition goes down, getting rid of that sort of extra percentage they're taking on student loans. So there's a number of different programs. And I think we need to be supporting those who, we need to be supporting the people through this time.
Okay, we'll do one more pass for questions on the line. And seeing none, that's all for today.
Thanks.
Much for watching, and to learn more, check out albertasfuture.ca.